live stream / panel in the future of work with some great entrepreneurs that are very experienced in the field. And without further ado, I'm going to let Alex and Clark introduce themselves and their experience and their companies in the future of work.
All right. To go first, thanks a lot, Ignacio, for letting us on. I think there's a few for me to kind of like put in stone, right? So I started off doing it's called Fat Stack Capital. We did asset management. I know this word is very bad, right? It's kind of like Alameda research, right? So we offered our research services to do and discover new companies, do cool stuff. And we did pretty great. So we did 350% in return year over year, and got me excited. We spent most of our time in stocks, crypto. So we did some VC, some real estate, whatever asset it might be. But essentially, me personally, I wanted to get some hands-on experience in KL, and we wanted to do like supply chain for like bigger companies, and they were really like the scale up phase around for a while, and I managed to I became the CEO's right hand. We started whole sales team. We landed clients like H&M, Cost Plus, in the US, some of the big retailers, some high performing retailers as well. And it was pretty interesting. And I think that's pretty much where I get involved in HR the first time, because within 18 months, I get to like people pretty much on my own. And I got super excited about HR because it's so hard to find actual people, right? And qualified people fast. Driving payroll, driving compliance globally. That's a whole new game. That's what got me excited. I'll pass it on to Clark if he's down.
Thanks, Alexander. Hopefully you guys can hear me, but I had some streaming issues. My name is Clark Widner. I am currently based in Lisbon, but I'm going to be potentially moving to Madrid here for my next project. I started my career more in corporate side of things in real estate. And then since business school, have been on the entrepreneurial path. Have had 3 primary businesses, all marketplace businesses. The first, known as Fever, which was an event discovery app turned experience marketing company that was launched in Spain and now exists all over the world. The next, and probably most relevant for this discussion, was as director of growth, an early employee at Vettery, which is a candidate marketplace, which turned the recruiting process on its head and helped companies discover and hire candidates, particularly tech candidates, very quickly. Most recently, I've been working on a project that's been in my blood for a long time called Heli as the COO, which is an adventure discovery marketplace based in the US and also all over the world. At this moment, I'm switching to start a new project in January, which I'll be excited to tell everybody about here in a couple months, based out of Madrid and through the Antler Founders Program. Happy to be here, Nacho.
Well,
I know.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you both having here. And of course, just to give anyone that's new here, Bondex is a Web3 talent marketplace and professional network. And the idea is to gamify and tokenize the professional network model to empower users. And really, I see a talent marketplace as a supply constrained marketplace, yet all the talent platforms of Web2 have usually focused on the incentives and the user experience of the employers. And everyone here, what they have in common is that Vettery, Bondex, as well as Nation, they've all kind of optimized for the incentives and the experience of the talent. And that creates better hiring cycles and happier employees and individuals, as well as employers. And so that's why we have a special conversation here. And the first thing I want to start with is, the marketplace dilemma. The cold start problem. How do you get supply and demand when you don't have supply, demand won't come, and when you don't have demand, supply won't come? So that's my first question. Alexander, if you want to go, how did you get over the chicken and egg problem or cold start problem when it comes to your own talent marketplace?
Yeah. So I think, me myself and the whole team, we pretty much we were like, okay, so how can we drive enough, supply through not only marketing and do something cool, product wise. And what we came up with is this problem, and it's not only talent, it's not only career focused people, it's like us, and even small medium sized businesses, right? Looking into this problem, how can they streamline the whole business aspect of a product, right? So what we wanted to do was automated bookings, automated payments, automated all pretty much all the boring stuff of running a independent business. We wanted to do to make sure that people just like go in there, do what they do best. I'm sure most of you guys, but like everyone listening, have heard about the passion economy, right? So dive into was people so passionate about what they're doing, they should own. You know what I mean? So just do only passion, and we would take care of like all the coordination, like the Quest app that you can use to do so. Like the thing, you can really just like jump on there and get started. The supply problem, they got it to like 15,000 users at first.
Solid numbers, a solid start there. And so, Clark, how did you guys do it with Vettery when you were launching the talent marketplace?
Sure. I mean, this is the key to the early stages of any marketplace. But at Vettery, our goal was to under promise and over deliver at the beginning. So we focused on our first few clients as our golden clients and making sure that they had a good experience. So, each week, the way the Vettery worked is we had a candidate marketplace where we added new candidates, and they stayed in there kind of on a rolling basis. Either they got hired or they decided to stay at their company, or for some reason they decided they weren't in the market anymore. 95% of these candidates were currently employed. So the goal there was not only to show discretion, but to get them offers to say, hey, compare this to what you're currently doing. But there was intent. On the company side, it was very clear what companies were looking for. They had it on the careers page on their website. So we didn't have to do too much digging to try to find the candidates that were accurate. So I remember on week one, we had about a dozen clients and about 50 candidates, maybe 55 candidates. But those candidates exactly matched the 2 or 3 roles that those early dozen candidates or companies had. Those companies either obviously had other roles, but we made sure for those certain roles that we had that. And in that first week, I think we got 4 hires. In the second week, we went to 100 candidates, 20 companies, and then the next week and the next week and the next week grew. But that initial experience that our companies had with Marketplace was, wow, here are candidates that match the criteria I'm looking for, and they have intent. So it was key just for those first few weeks for there to be the success. Obviously, there was some attrition, there was some churn. Some companies were like, this isn't interesting for me. But our goal was to continue to layer that on. And by the time we got into month 2 or month 3 in each of the markets we went to, there was enough liquidity of candidates, and there was enough companies sending what we called interview requests. So interview requests was how companies would reach out to a candidate and say, hey, I'm Nacho, I work at Bondex, I want to hire you as a full stack developer, I'll pay you approximately X, this is a bit about the role, do you want to speak with me? And that's how the platform engaged with the candidate. From there, the candidate process would start, and we would interview and hopefully hire. If they hired, then that would be a successful hire through the platform or not. So that was the key. We started really small, like I said, a dozen companies and about 50 candidates, but each week we were growing off that, and our KPI of obsession was interview requests. If we could get that interview request number growing, that means the candidates would be happy in the platform. It also meant the companies at least were seeing candidates that were worth putting in their pipeline.
I love it. And, in both cases, what I hear is you had the talent that the companies needed. And that's what, at the end of the day, got you over the cold start problem, right? Because again, a talent marketplace is a supply constraint problem. Yet you have this misalignment of incentives with traditional platforms. When you actually focus on keeping the talent happy, right? And discretion, intent, and, then the companies can find the right people that they're looking for right away, and that's because it becomes interesting even though you only had 50 candidates. I love that example in that story. And then to go now into a little bit more about, you just mentioned it, the passion economy and remote working. So I'd love to hear about, what do you guys think the future of work looks like? Most remote, hybrid, flexible working, project based. What do you guys think? What is the future of work for you? What do you think it looks like?
I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
So I think this is very industry and company specific, and I'll tell you why. I just spent the last 2.5 years working fully remote, about 7 to 8 hours, depending on where I was, ahead of the time zone of the rest of my team. I think that was very challenging. I think if I could fully analyze that experience, it wasn't set up for optimization. Starting your workday when other people are coming on Slack at 3 p.m. was really challenging. So that was unique. I think in certain businesses, particularly in a part-time remote or very skill-specific thing, fully remote will work. But I believe there's also a lot of value in being in person. I tell you personally, I'm very excited to return to an in-person experience. I think there are just learnings that you have when you're in person that can't be replaced online. So I think that's very industry specific. I think making a general, a holistic statement doesn't capture what really going to happen. It'll be interesting what some of these larger tech companies who've made this declaration of being fully remote or potentially fully remote indefinitely, how that works over time. Obviously, opinions are split. But I think with certain industries, certain roles, then it absolutely can work. But you're going to see, buckets of all three that are going to work best and optimize for different companies.
Yeah. So my end, I think I'll take a bit different approach because I have you, Clark, by the way. But like on the product side and what be taken from remote work, I think it's super important to say that I'm talking to a bunch of companies who are looking to say, hey, so let's hire like a web designer, but like part time, and also it's not even our team. It's like hired, it gets a bit too distant, right, from the whole company's DNA, what we want to build, and I think in future of work, which I'm sure you're looking at Bondex, but also Nation, is that we need to find a way to hire, do payroll, discover talent, be close to what they're building and to what they're trying to accomplish. Because future of work, a lot of people say, hey, so you can just like find this guy, he's like 5,000 kilometers website. Well, yeah, I'm certain that he can, but like he will definitely miss our DNA, our design language, what we're trying to build. Definitely hard for companies to get after. That's why we need to figure out new ways to stay pretty close to the employer and to stay pretty close to what to is trying to accomplish.
I think both answers are super complete and good, and I think Clark is a very good point. It's very industry and also company stage dependent. What I've seen across my clients is that when a company starts, it's very easy for them to be fully distributed, and then over time they usually like to develop some sort of hubs. They usually first start meeting up in person periodically when they can afford it and they have enough growth. Then they're having smaller hubs, and then at some point they're like, okay, now it's hybrid. You need to come into the office 3 to 4 days a week. This is at least in tech Web3 space, not the whole general tech. But I completely agree with you. And into diving into the next question, okay, and this goes into the same thing. Many CEOs, Musk and Diamond, for example, they want their employees back in the office no matter what. So, do you think that this will reverse the trend of the distributed, decentralized workforce, like pre and post pandemic? Like, where do you think we're gonna end up?
So I can just start being super brief. I think CEOs what they like, and that's me included, by the way. Are ways to make sure that we can still stay on top of the employees. So it's not like anything. It's not really brutal. It's just figuring out what's no one is like abusing what's going on and the way we work, but making sure that like deliverables and team members and everything is feeling super in work and feeling motivated. So with that, I'll pass it to you.
I think you're absolutely right, Alexander. I think CEOs, particularly CEOs of that stature, want almost to do it a bit from an accountability standpoint. Those are corporations, and you have to make these sweeping comments for the whole corporation. Obviously, as you dive deeper into those teams, there'll be more distribution. I think my answer is similar. It's very company stage and industry specific. COVID helped launch something that was very necessary for a lot of companies. There was this silly notion of FaceTime, and people were clocking in and clocking out, but their productivity was in a certain amount of hours, and it wasn't always the 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever it was. It's allowed people to be across different time zones and across different geographies and expand teams in ways that they never could have before. And I think enriched a lot of the individual candidates' lives. So most companies or most candidates would be happy that their companies are allowing them to do that.
It's both great answers, and that actually dives into my next one, which is, what are some of the issues and challenges of remote work and having a remote workforce?
You can go first.
Sure. I think the biggest issues are the learnings that happen around around the culture that you create as your company. My most recent company, we were a couple people going to COVID, and then we went to closer to 20 and beyond, and then came back down to that sweet spot. So how do you preserve that company culture? We did quarterly offsites to meet with the rest of the team, but it's challenging when you don't see everybody today. You don't feel the culture of the company as much as you scale. There were candidates that I didn't meet coworkers that I didn't meet for over a year. I knew exactly how the door creaked in their house, but I didn't know anything else, really about them and seeing them in person. So I think company culture is crucial and difficult to do from a distance. Obviously, you could argue there are a lot of savings. This huge overhead of offices and commuting and all of the perks that you give to candidates. But as companies grow, it's really important to demonstrate what the value is, what the mission, what this company was built on. And that's really difficult when you're not together.
Yeah. So to follow up on that, I think we still need to get together. Like we still need quarterly this, we need it, right? But just to function on I can just give you some guys, give you guys some insight from what we've been facing, 15 different people, across time zones. But the problem is that you have this marketing guy, this, I don't want to be super specific, but I guess figure it out. So you have this guy working in marketing, whatever it might be, but in at this time every day. But the rest of his team or her team will later, and he's almost done, and then that team will be continuing. So how can we use different tools? That's I'm not sure if that's also in the question. Figma, all these different tools to making sure that we can kind of stay aligned on our strategy, and stay aligned of our how we're moving ahead with our code, our new. But you definitely need a way to make sure that you can keep your whole team engaged around one meeting in with hours in between.
And so, okay, so that both makes sense. I guess culture and alignment are probably the biggest challenges as that I gather from your answers. The next thing that I would say is, what are some mitigants that you can do? What are some of the best practices you can do so that your distributed workforce works best? And Clark, you can start.
Yeah, so I guess
Yeah.
it comes down to productivity.
Go ahead, Alex.
No, yeah, so I guess it comes down to productivity, and first of all, making sure that you can get aligned around a place to meet, and no matter how the teams divide into different calls, into different projects along the week, a weekly kickoff and a weekly summarize. But when it's my afternoon, my evening in Europe, it's name, but based in LA. So that will be his morning. So how can we first of all get together and getting aligned, getting announcements out, actual stuff. You just need to figure out that your team can actually, and at least they have the tools on you as a CEO to making sure that they have the tools, and yeah, they can build the same strategy concept and and way ahead that they would as usual.
Okay, Clark, and this is the final answer from today's live stream. So, Clark, what are some of the mitigants best practices that you do in any of the companies that you've been involved in for best practices for managing a distributor workforce?
I think it starts from the beginning, and Alexander was learning a bit. Like, you have to set up the communication around productivity. So that's very clear KPIs, very clear OKRs, and reinstating that along the way. And as you hire people, you have to let them know, like, some people work really well remotely. You have a distributed sales team. They can be in the markets that they're supposed to be in, but results speak for themselves. In other industries that are potentially, or other departments that are less quantitative, you create KPIs and you create some sort of OKRs that you're checking in with them that show that. Employees will eventually express a desire to be with the rest of the team, and that either is something that you can create through periodic meetups for different departments on your team, or perhaps that's just not the best role for somebody who prefers to be in person. So I think communication is key, and then just setting very clear performance indicators. If somebody's crushing it, then I'm not really that concerned with how frequently they're on Slack or how frequently they're checking in and putting in that FaceTime. It's not important. What's important is that they're happy in their work. They're aligned with the mission, and that they're succeeding both for the company and for themselves.
Love it, gents. And thank you very much for your time today. It's a shame Elliot couldn't come, but overall, I think there's a lot of great things here and great advice for people that want to start any sort of marketplace, how to hire, how to manage distributed workforce teams, and how to get a company off the ground, essentially. So Clark and Alex, thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope everyone enjoyed today's chat and kind of a knowledge session around the future of work and mostly actually building great companies. Thank you, gents.
Thanks, Nacho.
It's a pleasure, Ignacio. Okay, see you around.
Bye. Bye-bye, guys.